Hi, I wanted to take a little bit of time and show you guys how to actually assemble the Figispin Pro. It's actually not that hard, it's just things you want to be careful in when you're looking out. This is your ceramic hybrid bearing. What you're going to want to do is get one of the bands, and there's a couple different ways of putting these bands on. What you'll notice is the bands have ridges on the outside. That should be facing towards the actual frame, and then the bearing actually touches the inside of the band. So what you're going to want to do, one or two ways, you could take the bearing, take one side of the band, slip it on the bearing on the other side, and just like that, it's on. Now, what you'll notice is if I spin this, you see how wobbly that is? That's what you don't want. In order to correct that, you lay it on a flat surface, the bearing and the band together, and you take your thumb and you kind of press the edges of the band and the bearing together. Press it all around. And if you notice again, just that little action helps smooth out a lot of what we were seeing with the ridges. And another thing I like to do is pull the bearing, or pull the bearing band just a little bit on the outer edges. That helps kind of straighten it out. You'll see a little pinch come together like that. And what that does is help space it out evenly across the band, the outer of the band. Just keep doing that. Press it up and down. And once again, when you spin it, it should be pretty straight. So that's the first thing you do. You're going to want to have that, do that same thing with all the other bearings. The weighted bearings that go on the outside can be put together the same way. Just like that, they go on. Or if you want to, you can set the bearing down, and you can actually take the band and push it on the outside of the bearing while it's sitting down. I tend to think that's a little harder, but it's really not that hard. Just a different way of doing it. So just like that, you get all of the bearings fitted with the bands. Lay them down, get them flat, like so. And there you have it. You have all of the bearing bands affixed to the bearings. Next, what you're going to want to do is install the bearings and bearing bands into the frame. So it doesn't matter which side you use. You can lay the frame down flat. The easiest way I find to do this is to take your bearing and your band together and align it with the hole that you're inserting it, and you push on all sides together like that. If you notice, I had two fingers on each side. You could do it with two thumbs, or you could take your whole thumb and press it all the way across and down. Now, what you're going to see is that it's been installed, but there's a couple of things you want to look for. If you see on the back here, if it looks like there's a little pinching of the band on the outside frame, all you have to do is keep pushing it through until it pops up, and then just push it back down with your finger. And what that'll do is just kind of help even everything out. Now I'm going to show you a scenario where an improperly installed bearing is attached to the frame, but look what it looks like. That's way too wobbly. So how do you solve that? It's actually pretty simple. You lay it down, you press on all three edges that are touching the band, and you turn the frame over and you press it again on all three sides. Now, just that little action has straightened out your bearing. Has straightened out the spinner overall. And what I like to do is just tweak it a little bit with both fingers pressing on both sides of the frame with the bearing attached. That helps flatten everything out. The easiest way though is to put it on a flat surface and to take your thumb again and to just press fit the bearing so it's flush with the actual frame. And you can spin it before you install the rest of the bearings, and if you notice, that's a pretty true spin. You can tell when they're not true. If you notice that, that was spinning pretty good. So now that you have that finished, what you're going to do is take the other bearings and you're going to install them just by the same action, even as you can, at the top of the frame, and push it down. That's one. Try to get as even as possible. Sometimes they go in there a little crooked, but that's okay. Just push it through. That's two. And there is three. So you have all three bearings installed onto or into the frame along with the center bearing. And we're also going to turn that over at the same time and press the other side. Now, the same way, if you see a section where you have pinching of the band against the frame, all you need to do, once again, is just push from the bottom up until it straightens up. And then you push it back down. That gets you pretty even. Once they're all in, try another spin, and everything looks like it's spinning pretty true. The last thing you want to do is to install the thumb holders. Now, these little thumb holders, maybe it's going to look a little tricky, but it's actually not tricky at all. What you're going to want to do is to take the first thumb holder, center it up with the bearing, and you essentially just push right down, and that'll install all the way into the bearing. You're going to see it. Take a look at it. If you notice here, what you want to do is make sure it looks pretty even. It's only going to go so far into that bearing anyway. So once that's in, you can kind of turn it over, see if it's spinning okay. Yeah, looks like we're pretty even there. Now, the tricky part is to get the second thumb holder in. What you're going to want to do is one or two ways of putting this in. It's a little bit of suction that we have between the actual thumb holder and the inner race of the bearing. If you try to just press it in like this, you're going to find an issue because we have so much of a tolerance in there for suction. It's going to want to force its way back out, and it's going to look like this, where you have one side up. So what we found is the best way to install is to basically take the thumb holder a little bit. You're going to hold it out like this, and you just kind of press it in on the side. Now, when you're doing that, it's inevitable that you could potentially push out the bearing a little bit. No big deal. All you want to do is, once you got the bearing holder in there, is to press the center of the bearing on the other side until it looks even. And what you do is take your fingernails just to kind of have the actual ability to make the outer race on the band of the bearings flush with the frame again. Force it in. You can spin it and see how it spins, and it's actually spinning pretty true. Now, one thing that I also want to recommend while you have your spinner is that it's important to make sure that when you're holding your spinner, that your fingers are on the monkeyfish logos. Reason for that is because of the braking system. If I hold it directly on the fish logos, it spins just fine, right? No issues. Actually, with these, a nice holding grip with the silicone has. Now, if I hold it on the outside, guess what's going to happen? It's not going to spin. The reason is that's the way that the braking has been designed in this piece, so that if I need to brake, all I have to do is put a little bit of pressure all over the cap or all over the holder, and it stops the actual spinner from spinning. So, if you're having problems trying to spin it, most likely it's because you're not holding it on the actual logos in the center of the thumb holder. So if you hold it like that, there won't be any issues. You could break this at any time just by pressing like that. All right. Thanks for watching, and can't wait to update you with more information.